Hey viewers, please don't forget to subscribe if you like the channel. Let's go.
Men of Reddit, what you did when you caught your SO cheating on you. I was with my ex-fiancée for 5 years. She and I had been through some really rough and scary times. First was her helping me curb my drinking, then there was a cancer scare for her. In December of 2016 we lost her father to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He battled for 2 years and tragically lost. So having that knowledge, this is how the suspicions and eventual confirmation came about. A couple weeks before we lost her father, her phone went off while she was showering and getting ready for us to go out and hang out with a coworker of hers and his wife who had become our friends. I told her it went off and she asked me to check and see who it was and what it said. So without hesitation, because at this point I had no reason not to trust her, I did. I unlocked her phone and read the text message. Before I shut her screen down, I saw some other texts from the day prior that were inappropriate. The exact words of the text said, "Let's fuck." I told her who the text was from and what it had said. I told her I didn't reply but that I saw something else that had been sent by her. I told her that I didn't appreciate being played for a fool and that I had been nothing but good to her. I left my family and friends and moved to another state halfway across the country to be with her. She reassured me that it was nothing like I was imagining and that it was strictly an inside joke among the people in the office and that there was nothing to worry about. So, I trusted her word and forced the thought out of my mind. Fast forward 2 months. Her father has now passed away and it is almost my birthday and almost hers, as well as hers is 3 days after mine. We traveled home to spend Christmas with our families where we met and went to high school together. Her father's final Christmas gift to us was new cell phones. The date is January 29, 2017. I'm wiping our phones to donate them and hers pops up with a message that certain messages are marked as saved, so I check the ones it said and they're the last ones she received from her dad. I text her to make sure she has them and she says yes, so I tried again and the message pops up again. So thinking I missed one, I look again and find texts from said coworker thanking him for the great sex. I didn't text her, I didn't call her. I immediately got into my car and drove to her job and confronted her. Then, left and went to work. We had talked and agreed to talk again when I got home from school that night. She promised she'd end it and that I didn't need to confront the coworker who is married or tell his wife. He and I eventually did meet and talk. The three of us came to the decision that to protect his wife's feelings that we would keep it between us, but that if I ever found out anything was going on again or had any idea that anything was going on, that I was going to take all of the evidence that I had to his wife. June rolls around and I have this feeling something is happening, so instead of crushing his wife immediately, I went and investigated. My suspicions were confirmed. I caught them red-handed in one of my cars having sex. I sent everything that I had to his wife and started planning my move back home to where my family was. I had been back 2 weeks and found out that said coworker and his wife followed me, so to speak, and moved to a city a few hours away. His wife and I talk all the time and she invites me out to see them and to barbecues with them. I personally think she wants to get even with him and have an affair of her own with someone that tried his hardest to keep them together and not hurt her. I was in a less than ideal relationship in my early 20s. We both treated each other badly and the relationship should have ended long before it eventually did, but for 2 years prior we were the relationship goals couple of our friends group. A contested abortion and some family drama on her part put paid to that. In hindsight, it should have ended before the events laid out in this story, but we were young, dumb, and hadn't figured out that some relationships cause more pain by continuing than they do by ending. Anyway, we had a huge circle of friends, and she and I were kind of the center of it. Our place was the hangout spot that everyone gravitated to on weekends and evenings. We had moved into a huge townhome with a couple of other friends with a vow to work on our relationship. Within a few months, we broke up. We fought constantly, and were making each other miserable. We both took this pretty hard because the human brain is a deeply flawed piece of hardware. She moved into a different room in the place, and we tried our best to be friends and get over the trauma of the relationship in order to preserve the circle of friends that we had brought together, many of which we'd had, mutually and individually, for years. A month after our breakup, she came to me and asked to reconcile and get back together. She said that she still loved me and missed me and that we should give it one more shot. I agreed with the caveat that we go to couples therapy and individual therapy. We were both in a deeply unhappy mental state, and I felt that if the relationship was going to work, we'd need to work on ourselves with some professional help. She agreed. A month later, one of our friends called me at work. I was a manager at a gas station and was working second shift. He told me that something had happened the previous weekend that had been struggling with. Turns out that my best friend and girlfriend were caught having sex on the living room couch by my roommate and a group of mutual friends when they came home early from a night at the club. The circle of friends all agreed to not tell me, for my mental health, after my best friend and girlfriend begged them, insisting that I'd kill myself if I ever found out. I didn't want to believe him. I called another friend, who had been named as having been a witness to this, and after a lot of yelling and threats on my part admitted that it was true. The entire circle of friends were in the loop on this. I was the literal last to know. I didn't go home after my shift, but over to my best friend's apartment. I confronted him about it and he claimed that she had told him that we were still broken up and that he wouldn't have touched her if he'd known we were still together. This, of course, was the world's worst attempt at a gaslighting, as he'd been present the night that my girlfriend and I had resurrected our relationship and had even helped move her stuff back into our room. I told him to never contact me again and left for home. At the townhome, I found my girlfriend in our bed. I told her, "I know what happened, we're done," and started packing my clothes and books. She just lay there the entire time watching me. I've never had a more uncomfortable hour since. I moved out that night and cut off contact with the entire group of friends. 6 months later I moved cities to ensure that I never ran into any of them again. The punchline here, I guess, is that the relationship ending hurt, but I've never really gotten over the betrayal of my friends. I still have trust issues. We were in a long-distance relationship, so we were lucky to see each other a few times a year. This was during a pretty low point in my life, so when I got to go visit her, it was a nice escape for a week or so at a time. Anyways, cut forward and we had been dating for about a year at this point. I was visiting her for 2 weeks this time. At around the halfway point in my visit, there was a night where she was acting different. I didn't really think much about it, and we were heading to bed for the night. I didn't fall asleep right away, but instead was lying beside her and I noticed she was turned away from me on her phone. I could hear her fingers tapping away, so I knew she was messaging someone. I just waited there with my eyes closed for about an hour and a half until she finally went to sleep. I knew this because her phone buzzed again, only this time she didn't pick it up to message back. Not wanting to wake her, I moved very slowly towards her phone. I managed to succeed in my stealth op, only to be quickly crushed when I saw the text message she received was from someone saved under the contact name, Daddy. The other suspicious part was that there was no other messages in this conversation aside from the last one he sent. I woke her up to question her about it, and I found out that she'd attempted to cover her tracks by deleting the messages after they were sent and received. Well, now what? I've still got another week here before I return home, but I know that the rest of the visit has just tanked. She lived with her parents and I didn't want to involve them in it, so after my initial breakdown during the confrontation I just had to sleep. I tried to stay in good spirits for the rest of my time there, but this knowledge was eating away at me. We talked about it in private several more times while I was there, and being young and naive, she managed to convince me that it wouldn't happen again. I really wanted to believe it, which is probably in part why I accepted it. Fast forward a few months and this time she's visiting me. There's been nothing out of the ordinary, and we're both really happy to be able to see each other again. Problem is, once something happens that breaks your trust, you can't help but have constant suspicions. I kept any thoughts I had about it to myself because I didn't want to sour our time together. The day before her flight back, we get everything packed up and ready to go because we decided to get a hotel in a city close to the airport. That way we could do the 3-hour drive today and not be rushing to get there tomorrow. Before we leave for the city, she hops in the shower. She left her phone on my bed, and I can only assume the reason for this was her way of showing she had nothing to hide. I have to check it. I don't see any sexual messages, and the daddy contact is gone. However, I do notice 2 contacts in her phone that draw my attention. I don't know who they are, and I can't help but assume the worst. But I don't call her out on it. Instead, I devise a plan. I set up a Text Plus account on my phone and tablet. One for each contact. Then I change the contacts' numbers to the ones now linked to my devices. Now all I had to do was wait. The last day comes and I drop her off at the airport. We checked out of the hotel this morning, so now all that awaits me is a 3-hour drive back home. No more than 10 minutes into that drive I get a message on my phone. It's a Text Plus message. I pulled over and read something to the effect of, "I missed you so much and couldn't wait to talk to you again." This isn't really enough to go off of alone, and I didn't want there to be a chance I was making the wrong assumption. So I engage her in conversation. I guess I'm good at playing the part of someone I know nothing about because the entire time I'm texting her, she's wildly oblivious to who is actually on the other end. I probe her with specific questions about her time here and the guy she was seeing. The answers I get are heartbreaking and made me see what kind of person she really was. She mentions how she doesn't really care about me, how I had pushed her hand to visit, which is why she even came here at all. How her entire time here was funded by me, so she got a free vacation out of it. After essentially shit-talking myself with her for what couldn't have been more than a few minutes, yet felt like hours, I stopped replying. I got the answer to my suspicions. The rest of the drive home was the worst I've ever felt. Never before had I felt so alone and betrayed. It scares me thinking back to it because a recurring thought I had during that drive was how easy it would be to just drive off the road. I'm in a better mental state now than I was during that time of my life, and I'm honestly glad that I found out the truth after only a little more than a year. Since we live in different countries, we had entertained the idea of marriage so we could live together. I can only imagine how much of a disaster it could have been given more time. Looking back, I can't help but laugh when I think about her connecting the dots. When I stopped replying to her messages during the drive home, she only sent about 2 more before her plane took off. 3 hours later when she touched down, I got another message from her and all it said was, "Did you just text me from a different number?" After that she tried calling my phone and left me an apology voicemail where she was crying, saying she didn't mean any of it, and begging for forgiveness. Cheaters are a different breed altogether. My girlfriend, let's call her China, instead of her real name, which is also a country, at the time was doing a summer abroad in Italy. We had planned in advance for me to meet up with her and spend 2 weeks traveling around Europe when her program ended. This was in 2007. I noticed she became more distant and was online less and less. She blamed the time change and how busy the program was. At one point, she confessed to me that she made out with another girl, which struck me as odd, but I didn't feel like it was cheating. I went to Italy with my parents for a family vacation a week before I was going to rendezvous with China. I started to get a really weird feeling from her, so I started to do a bit more online stalking. I got online at an internet cafe, phone internet wasn't a thing yet, went to her friends' Facebook feeds before the days of the timeline, and found comments talking about how her Italian fling had gone to hell, and how she was dreading the upcoming weeks with me. Yes, these were posted as public comments on her friends, my mutual Facebook friends' walls. I chatted with a couple friends back home who were online at the time, and they convinced me that I had to at least see her. So I decided to write her a long email calling her out on her bullshit, quoting her own comments, and telling her that she had better call me and explain herself. She had been dodging my phone calls for a few weeks, or I will be returning home immediately. She called me within minutes of my email, proving my suspicion that she had been dodging me and ignoring my messages, and asked for an opportunity to explain in person. We agreed to meet, seeing each other for the first time in 3 months, at a pub-style restaurant. She said that her program had been really difficult and emotionally taxing, and she had gotten into a relationship with a local Italian student at the same school who helped her through things. She had broken it off, and she still wanted to do the remainder of the trip with me. However, she could also see how absolutely heartbroken I was, literally unable to eat, and she told me that if I wanted to return home, she had friends she could stay with and she would be safe. I decided to return home after she assured me she would be safe, and the last-minute ticket change, since my original ticket home was 2 weeks later, resulted in me having 3 layovers and being in airports for over 36 hours to get back, one overnight on the floor of the terminal. We did end up talking again later when she moved to my city, still not sure why, and we were friends for a bit before I tired of being her prop at bars, as she told as many people as she could about how I abandoned her in Italy. I kid you not, she told the story at least once every time we went out. I stopped replying to her messages, she dropped me as a Facebook friend, and we haven't communicated in about a decade. I do have one friend who has kept up with her, so I occasionally get updates about her from that.